guys, so today's lunchtime lesson, we're doing something a little bit different today. We're going to look at a word, and the word we're going to focus on today is the word worth. So the reason I've chosen this is because it's one of these words that I notice quite a lot with my students. It comes up quite a lot, and people are never quite sure how to use it, and if they're using it correctly. It can be generally it's quite confusing, okay? So the reason it's quite confusing is because we use it in lots of different expressions, and it quite often will form part of another word as well, you know, and like we can maybe just not be quite sure how we want to apply it. All right, it is really worth knowing though, and that's because of the frequency of the word. Okay, so just to show you what I mean by that, I don't know, are you guys familiar with the Longman online dictionary? I can probably show you, let me just bring it up here quickly. And some of you I know will have used it for sure. Oops. So it's this dictionary here. It's a really useful dictionary. It's one of my favorite online dictionaries. I like moving between Longman and Cambridge Online, but Longman's a really, really great one for the purposes of what I'm going to show you just now. So this is the entry of the word worth in the Longman dictionary. And if you look at this bit at the top, it's a little bit small. I don't know if everyone can see it okay. Actually, why don't let's just use it on the Longman instead. Because that way we can make it a bit bigger. So if you have a look, is that better for everyone? Yeah. If you have a look here, you can see these two things, right? The S1 and the W2. And this is why this word is a useful word to know. So if you use the Longman dictionary and you see words that have this, that basically tells you that they are in the top 3,000 words of how often things are used. So if a word is in the top 3,000 words, those are important words to know and useful words to know. So this word, the S stands for speaking and the W stands for writing. So that what this actually means is that worth is in the top 1,000 spoken words and it's in the top 2,000 written words, okay? And what that means is that it's a word that's used a lot. If you check another word that's maybe not as common, like, I don't know, let me try and think of a word that's not so common, like auxiliary. Okay. That word doesn't have those things. Yeah, you see it doesn't have the three dots and it doesn't say S1 or W3 because it's not used as much, right? But if you've got words which are using this, then it's a word that you want to know and you want to think about. If you are following our vocabulary building course, we base a lot of the vocabulary that we choose from this collection of top 3,000 words. Yeah. So that's why it's a really good course to follow on Fridays because it's going to help you develop that core vocabulary that we really need. So you'll see as well, we've got the word worth here, but then we've got all of these different variations of it. Some of them are expressions, some of them are following with different patterns. All of these are adjectives, and then we've also got some nouns. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of these. We're going to just discuss the differences, okay? And we're going to think about how we use them and also any errors that tend to be made quite often by students. So let's begin thinking, first of all, about what the word worth actually means. And the best way for me to explain this to you is if we think about a very well-known brand of makeup's advertising campaign. Yeah, this is obviously not their actual advertising campaign. That's Thor. So this is Thor here, Chris Henry. But I'm sure you've all seen L'Oreal, the advert. Okay, so think about in your language, what is the advertising campaign for L'Oreal? Yeah, because in English, the campaign in English is because I'm worth it. Okay, and that's what worth means, right? So it has lots of different uses, but the sort of intrinsic meaning of the word is value, yeah, when we talk about worth. So if we think about L'Oreal, because you're worth it, what they're basically saying here is that you have value, right? That's the purpose of their advertising campaign. And let's look at a few more examples of this idea of value, of having value. So we can say making homemade food takes time, but it's worth it. There is value in doing that action, okay? You feel so much better when you eat it, right? So there's value in making that homemade food, yeah? Learning English is difficult, but it's worth it, right? Yeah, because if you learn English, you're going to get more job opportunities, so there's value in doing it. It's really hard getting up early to go running, but it's definitely worth it because after I do that, I get a lot of value from it and I feel better afterwards, okay? If you look at how we're using worth in this explanation to say that something has value, we always need an object. It's worth it, okay? You don't always need to start with it, right? But we usually do. So you could say, I could say getting up early to go running is worth it, or making homemade food is worth it. Like we can change that subject, but we very often just say it. Okay, let's have a few more expressions with worth. So I have a flat in London. It's worth a lot of money. It's worth taking some exam preparation classes. Some people feel it's not worth their while working. Any player worth his salt would love to play for his country. In these mountains, an experienced guide is worth his weight in gold. The fire caused thousands of pounds worth of damage. Be worth something. This is what is having value in money. We're really talking about money, or you have possessions or money that will give that value. Okay, so the two examples I said were the book is worth £3,000 or J.K. Rowling is worth billions. So in the first example, I'm talking about the value of the book. In the second example, I'm saying the value of that person, not their personal value as a human, but how much money they have. Yeah. We've got this expression worth a fortune, which is informal. So for example, the art collection is worth a fortune, meaning it's a lot of money, a very large amount of money. And be careful because it's not a verb. So we don't say that something worths something, it's an adjective, okay? This example, be worth doing something. Here, instead of talking about money, we're really talking about whether something is interesting or useful or helpful. So I can say the film is well worth seeing. Yeah, it's worth doing that activity. Or the city is worth a trip. Okay, so it's good value of your time. Yeah, you won't waste time if you go to do something like this. You're going to gain something from doing it. Okay, so if I say it's worth checking the details of that contract before you sign it, right? So it's going to be a good use of your time because you will gain some extra information or you'll gain some security from doing it. And then we also have these expressions which are quite common, like be worth the time or be worth the effort or be worth the work. So it was a great evening and definitely worth all the hard work, right? So you'll see it quite often collocate with those three words there. Okay, we might also say that it's worth somebody's while to do something. So we use this especially in spoken English, yeah? And it means that you should spend your time or your money doing that or on something because, again, it's got value and you're going to gain that value from it, right? So it might be worth your while to talk to the head of the department. So it's a good, positive use of your time. Or some people feel it's not worth their while if they can working if they can get money from the state. You'll quite often see that sometimes used as one individual word, worthwhile. Yeah, doesn't have to always be split. So what that means as well is useful, it's important, or it's good enough. to be a suitable reward for the time that you're doing it, right? So she considers teaching a worthwhile career. Yeah, okay. Or the time and expense involved in keeping up to date with all the changes has been worthwhile. This expression, guys, worth his or her salt. So if someone does their job well or they deserve respect, we would use this expression. So any player worth his salt would love to play for his country. So any player who does the job well or deserves a respect would like to do it. Any accountant worth their salt should be aware of the latest changes in taxation. So if they are doing their job properly, they will know these things. Okay. You'll usually, not always, but you'll usually see this expression using the word any at the beginning. So any teacher, any accountant, any parent, whatever, worth their salt, da 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 da. And also, guys, just to remind you as well, in English, we use the pronouns they, or there, if it's the possessive and so on. We use this if we're being gender non-specific. So if I don't know if I'm talking about a man or a woman, or if it's somebody, of course, who doesn't want to identify as either gender, that's the pronoun that we can use. Yeah. Right. Worth your weight or worth its weight in gold. So this expression just means that it's really useful. It's really valuable. So in these mountains, the example we had before, yeah, an experienced guide is worth his weight in gold. But I could say, my son is so thoughtful, he really is worth his weight in gold. Yeah. So if you think about it literally, if you have a person and their literal weight is the same money that you would get in monetary value, okay, that's what we're talking about here. So in all of the examples we've just seen, the word worth is being used as an adjective, okay? Remember, not a verb, right? So all of these examples have been an adjective. But we do also use the word worth as a noun. So, for example, £10 worth or $500 worth of something, right? So that would mean that there's an amount of something that is worth £10 or there's an amount that is worth $500. To give you an example, okay? There's a chance to win £2,000 worth of computing equipment. So the value of the prize will be £2,000. Yeah. Or I could also use it to talk about time. Okay. So 10 minutes worth or a week's worth of something. So here we're talking about amounts of time instead of amounts of money. So I can say we only had 3 days worth of food left. So the quantity or the value of what we had was equivalent to 3 days. Okay. Also, I just want to highlight the word worthy because that's often where people make mistakes as well. Yeah. So I quite often hear students say the word worthy when they mean to say it is worth it, right? So you might hear something like doing this course is worthy. No, we should say doing this course is worth it. Yeah. The word worthy, the actual meaning is that you deserve respect from people and it has to be used before a noun. So it would look like this. So Leeds United, the football club, were worthy winners of the competition. They deserved to win that, right? They deserved the respect to win that. Or you might describe somebody as a worthy opponent. So they have, you're competing against them, but you respect them because of what they do. They're like your equal. We sometimes use this to say to be worthy of something. So that means that you deserve to be thought about or treated in a particular way. So a couple of other books are worthy of mention. So they deserve a mention. So rather than value, when we use the word worthy, it does still have this idea of value, but we're talking more about deserving something rather than the actual value of it. And the other thing to say as well is the word worthy is actually generally more formal. So it doesn't really get used as much. So just be careful with that. It does exist, but it does quite often get used incorrectly. Another good word that involves the word worth is worthless. Okay, so when we say something is worthless, it has no value, whether that's because of money or because of time, and it has no importance. So the house was full of worthless junk, right? So everything in it had no monetary value, or the information was worthless to me, right? They didn't give me any information. The opposite of that, the extreme opposite, would be priceless. Yeah. So if something is worthless, it has zero value. If something is priceless, it's extremely valuable. And it is so valuable, it's impossible to say how much money it's worth. So you talk about, for example, priceless antiques. Yeah. Or the Mona Lisa is priceless because it's worth so much money, we can't actually say how much it is. So just be careful, because again, sometimes people confuse these two words. Okay. All right. So let's test ourselves to finish. Here are all of the examples that we saw before. Take a second individually and read through those examples and just think to yourself, how confident am I now that I can remember each of these? Or is there anything that I'm not quite sure about? And what I would suggest you do is later on today or tomorrow, or maybe actually, in about, let's say, 3 or 4 days time, I would suggest that you watch this video again and see if you can remember the differences with the word and how we should be using it.